Welcome to another episode of Two Drink Maximum. I'm your host, Shane Byerly.
I'm your other host, Chase Baxter. It's going to be an award-winning show, I think, today.
Indeed it is. We're very excited to be here today. And as we record, it's Oscar season is slowly but surely, growing on us. And we are so excited today. We have a very special guest. Jeff Margolis is here with us today. For astute listeners of the show, that name might ring a bell. Jeff is Adam Margolis' father, who we had on the show last season. Jeff is a director, producer extraordinaire that his IMDb is simply dizzying to kind of read through. We are so excited.
I got a little lost going through it.
Yeah, we are so excited to have him on the show. Jeff, thank you so much for making the time to spend with us today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Of course. So as we usually do, we like to start the show. We like to ask our guests, what are we drinking today and why are we drinking it? The drink of choice that you have is we have an ice cold, refreshing San Pellegrino with a nice wedge of lime in here. So
we've got ours ready.
Cheers.
Absolutely. Yeah, there we go. So what about San Pellegrino is special to you? Is there a story behind it, or is it just a particular favorite of yours?
I drink San Pellegrino or Perrier because I don't drink alcohol.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And there are a lot of people, when you socialize, there are a lot of people that say, you don't drink. What do you mean you don't drink? Mm-hmm. Or there are people who say, oh, if you're not drinking, I won't drink. I don't want to spoil anybody's party,
Right.
So Perrier or Pellegrino in a glass with ice and lime looks like a vodka soda.
There you go.
It does.
I enjoy it. I drink it. A lot of people have water with dinner. I have Perrier or Pellegrino. I like the fuzzy feel of it, I guess.
Of course,
I like the taste.
Good mouth feel.
Yeah, I like the taste of it, so it's all good.
Indeed, it's a treat. It's bubbly. It's delicious. Well, thank you for sharing.
Sure.
So, I mean, God, we have so much to cover, and I want to just kind of jump right in. I mean, so like we mentioned, your resume is just a dizzying list of success, but obviously no one just starts out that way. Everybody comes from somewhere. When you decided that you wanted to get into the entertainment industry, was that a decision that you made very early on in your life, or was that something that kind of happened in your later teenage years or more formative years? How did you decide that this was the industry for you?
It happened very early on in my life. And my book is called We're Live in Five, My Extraordinary Life in Television. And the reason it's called We're Live in Five is because in my career, I've done so many live shows. And, the last thing you hear before you go on the air is We're Live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So I decided to call the book that. And My Extraordinary Life in Television is just that. I've had an extraordinary life in television. And it started when I was 5 years old.
Wow.
My dad was in the electronics business, and he used to want to be the first one ever to have any new electronic device, especially in the neighborhood.
The early adopter.
Yeah, right. One night he came home with this little wooden box that had a piece of glass on the front of it, and he plugged it into the wall, and I saw people in there. And I was 5 years old and fascinated and couldn't figure out how they got inside that box and how they got so small.
That's awesome.
But I watched television as a young boy. So that's where my fascination started. And listen, I was a young Jewish boy from Southern California. And us young Jewish boys, our grandparents and parents wanted us to be lawyers or doctors. So, my whole childhood, I heard, you'll go to college, you'll be a lawyer or a doctor. I knew that wasn't going to happen. I knew that was never going to happen, but I did not want to disappoint my grandparents or my parents. So I graduated high school and got accepted to USC as a pre-med student. And about halfway through the first semester, I went into the counselor and I said, I could not dissect another frog or look at blood any longer.
Not for me.
I just can't do it. I said, I need to change my major. I want to be a television director, producer. And she said, the only television school in the country right at the moment is UCLA. So anyway, I drove across town to UCLA and I met with the dean there. And the full story's in my book. You'll have to read. I'm just sort of giving you the shorthand version.
Yeah, of course.
He wouldn't let me in at the end of that semester because there wasn't enough time, but I went the following semester. And during that break, I did tell my parents, and they were very disappointed.
Oh no.
Oh no,
Very
yeah.
disappointed. Television, you know how difficult that is? Television, like they knew,
Yeah.
was hearsay. That was sort of the beginning. As I grew up watching television, I started getting very interested in music. And, as a kid, I took piano lessons, I took guitar lessons, I even took flute lessons.
Hmm.
But I always continued on with the piano, and I loved musical variety shows when they started on TV. And I loved the big spectacles, Miss America and the Academy Awards.
You mentioned the variety shows was something you loved. We hear tell that one of your first forays into television was a literal breaking in to a TV station to try and get a show on the air. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, okay. When I was doing my final project for UCLA, it was on 2-inch tape at that time. I had the 2-inch tape under my arm.
Nice.
I had heard that there was a television station, a local station in Los Angeles called KTTV, Metro
Mhm.
Media KTTV, which is now Fox.
Hmm.
And so I looked up the guy who was the CEO, the top guy at Metro Media Television. And in those days, back there in the late 60s, you could drive your car, park in the parking lot, walk right into the building, look at the display to see where everybody was, get on the elevator, and go up to somebody's office.
Different time.
Yeah, no security guards, no anything. So the gentleman's name was Jim Gates, and I had my 2-inch tape under my arm, and I went up to see him, and his secretary laughed at me. And she said to me, all of the other station presidents from the Metro Media stations around the country are here, and they're looking for new shows and everything. I said, well, it's perfect.
Hey.
That's why I'm here. That's why I want to talk. Said, but he's too busy. He's not going to talk to you. I said, do you mind if I just sit here and wait for him? She said, you might be waiting 3 days. I said, I'll sit here and wait 3 days. So, of course, he came into the office and he said he sort of nodded at me, and he came over and he said, may I help you? And I said, I'm Jeff Margolis. I'm a student at UCLA. I brought my final project in. I know you're looking for youthful programming. I'd like to have a conversation with you. And he said, you pushy little prick, aren't you? So I said, I am. So, and when I did what this project was when I did my final project at UCLA, I wanted to be in television so badly. And I was very fortunate. I had a relative who was in television.
Mhm.
And his name was Monty Hall. I don't know if you're familiar
Oh,
with
yes.
that name. But he had a show on the air called Let's Make a Deal, which is on NBC. It was NBC's #1 daytime show. He said, of course, I'll help you. And when I was at UCLA doing my final project, I was already doing cue cards on Let's Make a Deal. I had done cue cards on Let's Make a Deal. And then I got an opportunity to do cards on the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour.
Wow. Good Lord.
And I went to Uncle Monty and I said, I can't do both shows and go to school. Is it okay if I, do the Smothers Brothers? And he said to me, whatever you want. I opened a door for you. Good luck, my child.
Right.
That's wonderful.
I'll see you in the hallway and we'll hug and kiss. I was doing the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour and I was still going to UCLA.
Mhm.
I had to do my final project. I'd become very friendly with Tommy, as I said, and I met, artists who were on the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour. All the other students who were doing their final project at UCLA at that point in time, they were doing a scene from a play, or they were trying to do a 5-minute news broadcast or something like that. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do a 1-hour variety show.
Yeah, that's
And
incredible.
That's an impressive challenge then, for sure.
Yeah.
I went to the dean and he said, what have you been smoking? So I said, no, I really want to do it. He said, we can't give you we can't give you the money to make that happen, the time to make it happen. I said, don't worry about the money. Okay. I'm not asking you for money. I'm just asking you to allow me to do this. He said, well, how are you going to get people to come in? And I said, you got to trust me, Dean. I've got this covered. He said, okay, I think it'll be a fascinating project for you to bring to UCLA School of Film and Television if you can really pull it off. It'll be great for the other students. And we'll see. I wish you good luck. And he said, I will give you 2 Fridays. I'll give you 6 hours on 2 Fridays to do your final project. So I went to work quickly, and I sat with Tommy, and I said, "Is it okay if I give Murray the surprise of his life?" And Tommy said, "Of course." I went to Murray Roman. I said, "You want to be the host of a variety show?" I said, "I'm doing one for UCLA, and I'd like you to be the host. And guess what? We'll call it Murray Roman's TV show."
Hit the right buttons.
Yeah,
Get him on board.
Yeah, right.
He played him like a fiddle. I like it.
So he said, well, UCLA, it's a place to start.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, with Murray's help and Tommy's help, we did the Murray Roman TV show, and our guests on the show at UCLA Final Project, our guests were Frank Zappa, not the Mothers of Invention, just Frank Zappa,
Mm-hmm.
Mama Cass Elliott from the Mamas and the Papas, Tom and Dick Smothers, Glenn Campbell,
Wow,
who was in the Smothers Brothers Orchestra on their show.
Oh, wow.
He was a guitar player in the orchestra. And Tommy was trying to make him a star.
I think it worked out for Mr. Campbell.
It worked out beautifully. And 2 other comedians, a gentleman named Hamilton Camp, who I'm not sure if you're familiar with, and another gentleman named Pat Morita,
mm-hmm.
who ended up being all the Karate Kid movies.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I put this show together, and in the 2 Fridays, 2 6-hour days, all the talent showed up. You know, the students were excited as hell to be doing camera and sound and lighting for like real people.
Mm-hmm.
I edited this show together, and this was the 2-inch tape I put under my arm when I went to see Jim Gates at KTTV, Metro Media.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And
was that really your first taste of how wild live television production actually is on that scale?
No, I knew from holding cue cards on the Smothers Brothers for the first season that I did it. I knew what live television was like. I knew how difficult it was and how much work it was, and I wanted to do it. And you've got to, when somebody gives you the opportunity to do something, as I'll tell you later on, whatever commitment you make to being able to pull off the project, you better have the talent to back up your words, which I did. And I felt very confident in doing this thing. I was excited about it. So I finished the project at UCLA, 2-inch tape, took it under my arm, went to see Jim Gates. And finally, the end of the conversation with Jim Gates was, look, I've got this tape I did at UCLA. It's a 1-hour variety show, Murray Roman's TV show. Murray was the head writer on the Smothers Brothers. The guests are blah, 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 blah. And he said, oh, that's kind of what we're looking for. He said, what is it? I mean, does it look like a television show? Does it look like a student project? I said, you could take this tape downstairs and put it on the air tonight.
There you go.
And he said, oh, big shot. So I said, I'm telling you, no, really. He said, I've got to go back downstairs to this meeting, but I'm going to do something. I want you to go down to the videotape room. I'm going to call down there, and I want you to meet one of the videotape operators. We'll put the tape on. And he said to me, we'll look at the first 10 minutes and see if it's, anything like what we're looking for. So I said, that would be fantastic. I couldn't ask for anything else. I went downstairs with the 2-inch tape. I met the videotape operator. He put it up. In those days, you had to set up bars and tone. I don't know if you guys remember.
Dial into outer space.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So he set it up, and he called upstairs to the conference room where everybody was and said, we're ready. And Jim Gates said, okay, go ahead and roll it. And he rolled it, and there was Murray Roman's TV show. And I had graphics done, and I had real music and everything. And then Murray came out, and he did a very short opening monologue, and he and he introduced his first guest. Oh, this was what I forgot to say. His first guest, who was a little girl who, so this is her first time in front of television cameras, little girl named Linda Ronstadt.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
So anyway, so we run the 10 minutes, and the videotape operator, after 10 minutes, stops the tape, and the phone rings, and it's Jim Gates, and the videotape operator answers, and he said, oh, sure, Mr. Gates, sure, Mr. Gates. And he ran over and he pushed the play button again. They wanted to see more.
Ah, that's great.
Yeah, so they watched about 30 minutes, and Jim Gates told the videotape operator to have me meet him back up in his office. Now, I'll make a long story short. So Jim came up and he gave me a big hug, and he said, "We're in business." I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Can you recreate Murray Roman's TV show in our studio? We have brand new studios on the corner of Sunset and Van Ness.
Ha.
We have these brand new Metro Media studios, and we'd love for you to recreate this show in our studio using, union camera operators and lighting guys and all that stuff." We recreated it. We did Murray Roman's TV show. It aired on all the Metro Media stations. And there used to be the local Emmy Awards in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
And that year at the Emmy Awards, Murray Roman's TV show won for Best Variety Show, Murray Roman Best Host. I won for Best Producer Director.
That's incredible.
And that was my jumping off point, really. I mean,
well, I'm sensing a cool theme here, which is you've kind of Trojan horsed your way into this incredible career, right? With like going to college under the pretense of pre-med, and then it transitioned to TV, going into KTTV with like you kind of Trojan horsed your way in there. And I think that's incredibly cool. That's a very trailblazer, and I think that's a very maverick behavior. I think that's awesome.
Boundless confidence of trying to move forward.
Yeah,
so you go about that, and that confidence carries you all the way to one of the biggest award shows in entertainment. Could you tell us about the first Oscars that you directed and how you wound up in that seat in that instance?
Well, and before you even get to that, my question is, as you progress through your career, because you're doing all of these, you directed Richard Pryor live in concert, you've directed an episode of Roseanne. As you kind of work your way up through your career like that, after you had that high-rated show on CBS, how does that generally work? And especially in the TV arena in those days, were you kind of a director for hire in the sense that CBS just told you, we have this show, and you're directing? Or as you started to reach that, kind of level of success that you did, were you able to pick all the projects you wanted along the way leading up to the Oscars?
Mm-hmm. What happens is you become a freelance director. Mm-hmm. And you have to have an agent. You get an agent, and the agent gets a call and says, "Is Jeff available to do this show?" It doesn't have to be on CBS. It can be on ABC or NBC or wherever. At the time there were only 3 major networks, but you become a freelance director, and if you're good, other producers become aware of you, and network executives become aware of you, and you just get calls, and you can sort of, if you're available and you want to do the show, you do it. Mm-hmm. And by 1976, I realized that so many of the shows I was hired to do as the director, I was really producing and directing. Mm. And so I thought, well, I might as well get the credit and the money as long as I'm doing the work.
Doing the work, right?
Right. So I opened up Jeff Margolis Productions. And then I was a producer director for hire. But I always kept the door open. If somebody wanted to just hire me as a director, I was available. I had the confidence in myself, and I wasn't afraid to say, I can do that. And then given the opportunity, I did it.
Yeah.
I never let anybody down. I never failed. I never did not deliver what I said I would deliver.
Yeah, that's amazing.
We work in a results-based industry, and if you can deliver as you said you will, that's a recipe for success over and over and over.
Absolutely. And then, the next guy wants you, and the next guy wants you. And how did I get the Oscars? I always dreamed about one day directing the Oscars. That was my my get to goal, get to the Oscars. And I did a lot of work at ABC, and ABC was the home of the Academy Awards. And I became very friendly, had a very good relationship with the gentleman who was the senior vice president of um, weekly variety series and specials. And so he was responsible at that time. ABC was responsible for hiring the director for the Academy Awards. And it was 1989. And the gentleman's name was John Hamlin. I got a call one day. I was in the middle of doing something. I don't remember what it was. The director of the Academy Awards had been let go, and ABC needed to find a new director. And my phone rang, and it was John Hamlin on the other end. He said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm in the middle of doing this special for Dick Clark, whatever it was." And he said, "You got a minute to talk?" I said, sure. Let me just tell everybody I'll be right back," which I did. I went into my office, I closed my door, and he said, "What are you doing next March?" He said, "How'd you like to do the Academy Awards?" I said, "Pardon me?" He said, "How'd you like to do the Academy Awards?" And when I could catch my breath and speak again, I said, "John, really?" He said, "You're the new director of the Academy Awards." He said, I would like you to, I have to get it by, it's been approved by everybody at ABC. I now have to get you approved by the Academy, which shouldn't be a problem, and the new producer." So I said, "Who's the producer?" He said, "The Academy just hired a gentleman named Alan Carr." Alan was a big movie and Broadway producer. He did the biggest movie ever in the history of motion pictures, the biggest box office hit, which was
Gone with the Wind with the inflation adjusted.
get ready for it.
Yeah.
Grease.
Grease, yeah.
Really?
Yeah. At the time,
massive hit. Yeah.
At the time, biggest box office grossing movie. So Alan Carr was so happy. And he said, "I don't care what the Academy says, Jeff's going to direct the show with me." And so then Alan and I got on the phone. He said, "I'm so glad you're available." He says, "You've got all this live television experience with the Emmys and the American Music Awards and the beauty pageants and all that. You can get me through this thing." It was a wonderful show. Alan Carr decided that he didn't want to host on the show. So all the presenters who were booked on the show sort of hosted the award that they were presenting. And everybody, it was Don Johnson and Melanie Griffith at the time, and it was Bruce Willis and Demi Moore, and anybody who was married or starred in a movie together, or
power couples.
And he ended up having 3 of the James Bonds together, Roger Moore and Sean Connery, and
wow,
I don't remember who the third one was. It was booked brilliantly. And the show was really good. Alan and I came up with this idea of, we said, all 5 nominees in every category are really winners. The fact that they got nominated, they've won. So when the presenter opens the envelope, let's not say, "and the winner is," let's say, "and the Oscar goes to." So that everybody feels like they're a winner.
Right.
And Alan and I started that. And if you notice on every award show you watch on the air now, it's the Emmy goes to, the Golden goes to, the Grammy goes to.
You started that language and perception shift as far as how it unveils. That's pretty cool.
Right. Yeah.
Well, and I mean, that's incredible too, because not only is that just the standard syntax for award shows now, it's now become a culture. It's just a part of our lexicon, right? Anytime you're in a business meeting and someone starts overreacting something, or they get a little too emotional, you could always say, "and the Oscar goes to," right? It's become a cultural touchstone. That's incredible. I am a little disappointed to hear that when you got the Oscars directing gig that it was just a phone call. I assumed that, Jack Nicholson would have showed up at your house with a red envelope and he would have said, "and the director of the Oscars," open up the. That's incredible. God, so putting your stamp on that from just the absolute beginning, I mean, that's pretty incredible. I mean, can you talk a little bit about your drive to make the Oscars a little bit to refresh them and to put your stamp on them. What was your kind of objective every year that you did it? Because the pressure to make it better every year seems to just build, and that has continued to build. But what was that like for you, that experience of making it better, before you came on, and then trying to top yourself year after year?
Yeah, and then to bookend on Shane's question there, because it's an amazing question. I also like in doing that, what were you imagining like your ideal audience was at home? Who were you trying to play the show to?
So my stamp was always along with Gil Cates. We sort of did it together. And then the last year that I did the show, Gil was unavailable, and Quincy Jones came in and produced the show.
Wow.
What we always try to do, you have sort of a double-edged sword there when you're doing the Oscars. You've got all those movie stars sitting in the room with all of their representatives and all the studio executives and everything. You have to do a show for them. And they're all nervous, and it's the toughest audience in the world, to get anything from. But we're really doing the show for the billions of people around the world that are watching the Academy Awards. And if it wasn't the Academy Awards, if it was another kind of live show that I was doing that was for millions and millions of people, I always put myself in the fifth row center of the theater or the venue or wherever. And I shoot the show for the audience at home the way I see it in the fifth row center. That's the way I shoot, because we're really doing the show for the millions and millions of people at home. And, I don't know if you're familiar with Nielsen ratings. They don't quite mean what they did one day, but most of the Nielsen I never met anybody who had a Nielsen box on the back of their TV.
Only in legend, only in legend.
Yeah, right. No, most of the ratings came from the middle of the country. The networks and the advertisers wanted to see what people in Iowa and Nebraska were watching. So anyway, you asked me specifically about the Oscars. We always tried to do a show that honored and celebrated the movies, which is why we were there, and celebrated the people who put them together. We made sure that the costume designer and the art director and the editor got as much credit just about as everybody else.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a celebration of the entire industry, big or small, right? Every job matters.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's incredible that you guys were just so focused on harnessing that energy, the love of the movies, right? And just harnessing that kind of energy to millions upon millions of, eager viewers, right? To the show.
You had to do a show that sort of satisfied everybody some way or another. It was a great challenge to put not only the Oscars, but any show that I did. I always wanted to make it the best it could be. The Oscars was a tremendous challenge. It was a show that the network and the advertisers wanted to be 3 hours, and it was never 3 hours.
Never, no.
Yeah. And, when the when the winners, these big stars, got wind of, after 45 seconds, the music started sneaking, play them off. I think the first one to say was Julia Roberts when she won for whether it was supporting actress or actress, I can't remember, but Bill Conti was the music director that year, and he could be seen by all of the people who were on the stage, because that's the way we set up. It was a 60-piece orchestra, and you could see Bill Conti with his wand, getting ready to cut the orchestra, and Julia Roberts saw him ready to cue the orchestra to play music, and she said, Mr. Stickman, put your stick down. I'm not done. Don't start. She said, I might never get up here again, and I'm going to talk until I'm finished. Well, what can you do?
What can you do? You don't tell Miss Roberts. No, absolutely not.
Right.
Did y'all ever think about instituting the giant vaudevillian hook to pull people off the stage?
Yeah. we did think about it. We absolutely did think about it.
And speaking of orchestras, I feel like I'm hearing the orchestra playing us for a cue that we need to take a quick break and we need to refill our San Pellegrinos. So we'll be right back after a brief message. More with Jeff Margolis. Stand by. Chase, I don't know about you, but it does feel like ever since COVID hit, we spend so much time in our homes, and our homes have kind of become our office, and it's been this kind of weird blend of professional and home. I find that occasionally it is difficult to become creative in the house. Sometimes you got to get out and you got to find a different space to kind of let that creativity fly. And we are excited to share with our listeners that if you are in the LA area, we have the solution for you. We are proudly sponsored by The Muse Rooms, which is a creative co-working space that is here. They have a Hollywood location and they have a Burbank location, 2 convenient locations for you, that is ready to serve all of your creative space needs. If you want to rent space for a day to work on that screenplay, or if you need to rent a conference room for a big meeting that you have with a team that doesn't meet regularly, the Muse Rooms has got you covered. It's a great space. It's a great owner. It's a great vibe too. It's just a really cool, you'll get points with the youngsters.
Oh, yeah.
Being cool for renting out.
It's the hip spot to be, indeed.
It definitely is. So give the Muse Rooms a check if you're for all of your creative co-working space needs at the Muse, MUSE rooms.com. And now let's fill up another glass and get back to part 2 of the show.
All right, welcome back from the break. We are here talking with Jeff Margolis, incredibly confident and capable producer-director of every show you've ever seen, apparently. We were talking earlier, you said one of your challenges was to trying to appeal to a 18 to 25 demographic for the Oscars once you first jumped on board and as the series or the show just continued. I think you did an amazing job at finding the most appealing comedian in the world, Billy Crystal. You got to work with him for a number of years. So I wanted to ask what that relationship was like. He has a really wonderful foreword in your book as well. So how did you develop that working relationship with him?
Well, I met Billy back, I'm trying to remember, I did a summer replacement show on CBS, which I don't know if anybody really remembers. It was on for 6 weeks. Anyway, Billy Crystal was in a soap opera / sitcom called Soap, if you remember, on ABC.
Mm-hmm.
And so Susan Anton's show had all kinds of people from all other networks, people who did sitcoms and other variety shows and everything. And so Billy was one of her first guests on the show, and that's where I met him. And all this is in my book. Mm-hmm. I'm going to shamelessly plug my book again.
The book is We're Live in 5, My Extraordinary Life in Television. What is the date of the release of the book?
February the 13th. You can go to Amazon right now, and it is online. You can pre-order it if you like.
I'll say it so that Jeff doesn't have to say it. It might be the perfect Valentine's Day gift for your significant other.
For all the entertainment fans.
Thank you so much.
I mean, that must be so satisfying to have worked with Billy. I mean, most people who talk about the Oscars talk about how Billy Crystal was the perfect, Oscar host. And it's like they all pined for the days that he was hosting. That must feel so satisfying to have worked on the Oscars where many people consider it to be the peak of the Oscars.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Pretty cool. Billy is just amazing. I mean, he's a really nice man, and he's genuinely funny all the time. He's funny all the time. But what we decided to do was we decided that I would see his opening monologue, hear and see his opening monologue for the very first time when we were live on the air.
Mm-hmm.
So when we would rehearse, and I would need to rehearse for lighting and sound and cameras and everything, Billy would come out and he invented something called the blah blahs. And he would say, okay, Jeff, I'm going to walk over here and I'm going to blah, 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 blah. And then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to blah, blah. And then I'm going to, but the only thing he told me was if he was going to deal with somebody in the audience and it was important, I felt it was important for everybody to see that person's reaction. I wanted to make sure that I had a camera on that person. So Billy told me who he was going to go to around what point in his 8-minute or 12-minute monologue or whatever it was. So I always had camera coverage. Other than that, I saw Billy Crystal's monologue every time live on the air for the first time.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's amazing.
And I sat in the control room and in the remote truck, and I watched it. I put myself fifth row center in the theater, and I watched it for the first time like everybody else was seeing it. I always looked forward to that opening. It was such a challenge, to get through that.
Yeah. You got to start the show off right.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
why I
dude.
say, there's no time or room to be nervous. You got to be excited. You got to get the adrenaline up, and
Yeah, for sure, right?
if you're nervous, it just somehow it doesn't work. It doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
Right,
It doesn't
exactly.
work for me.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
you mentioned before, who mentioned Jack Nicholson? One of you mentioned
That was
Me,
Shane.
I mentioned, yeah.
A funny story. I was going to say the
Mm.
first year with Alan Carr on the Oscars. What I did was the day that the show was live on the air, I did a complete dress rehearsal of the show like we were live on the air that morning.
Mm-hmm.
And then I liked to give everybody like a 2-hour break between the dress rehearsal so that everybody could get their stuff together and do whatever they had to do and prepare and all that. We finished the dress rehearsal. We take the break. I stay in the truck. I get all my notes done. And I wanted to go back to my room and just sit there and, sort of just relax. And maybe a couple of my stage managers would come in, or the associate director or something. We just sort of relax and talk. And I just wanted to take some time for everybody to chill a little bit before we did the live show. So I'm walking toward my dressing room, and the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion, the music center, had this young man who was responsible for all the dressing rooms. And I'm walking toward my dressing room to go in, and he's standing in front of my door, and he's white as a ghost, and he's shaking. His name was Scott. I said, "Scott, you okay?"
Mm.
He said, "Mr. Margolis," he said, "somebody's in your dressing room." I said, "Well, I got to get in there." He said, "I know, but," he said, "I couldn't say no." I said, "Okay, all right, I'll see." He's in there. I knocked on the door. I opened the door, and sitting inside was Jack Nicholson and Warren Beatty.
Oh, wow.
Amazing.
That's a heavy room.
Yeah. And so I opened the door, and Jack Nicholson says, "Oh, you must be Jeff Margolis." I said, "I am. And you're in my room." He says, "Well, we figured you'd be busy. You wouldn't mind, pal, if we stayed in here, would you?" So I thought, I'll take my stuff and I'll find somewhere else to change, chill
Yeah.
out, and keep them in there. And so they said to me, "To thank you, we'll take a picture with you."
Mm.
There was a photographer, that was following me around anyway. So he was right there. And they got up, and the photographer came in the dressing room, and I've got a great picture of me and Jack Nicholson and Warren Beatty, which is in the book.
That's
Oh,
amazing.
that's incredible.
God,
You see
that's
the picture in the
amazing.
book.
One of the things that I think is so exciting about the Oscars, and one of the reasons why people love tuning in, is because it's a live event, and because there are so many celebrities and so many kind of VIPs in the film and TV industry there, that it really has this kind of feel of like controlled chaos, where it's like juggling chainsaws or whatever, where it's like it's all up in the air, but it's just barely controlled. And obviously you're kind of the ringleader of making sure that it stays on track. But I'd be curious to know if there's any stories that you can share of a time where it almost fell off the rails completely, or the whole show almost derailed, and you were able to kind of bring it back. Because from sitting on the other side of the TV set, it looks like it's just being held together, and it always is. But was there ever any time that you almost lost it?
Well, yes. My reputation is that I have never, ever raised my voice. I've never yelled at anybody. I don't do it. At the end of my book, I have my 11 rules of the road. Everybody has 10 rules of the road, so I decided to have 11.
Smart.
These go to 11 for
These
Spinal
go to
Tap of you.
11. Yeah. Yeah.
And my first rule of the road is be kind. My fifth rule of the road is be kind. And my 11th rule of the road is be kind. That's how I've lived my life as a television producer director. And you get so much more out of people when you're kind, when you treat everybody. When I do a show, I make everybody, I create a family and I make everybody part of it. And I create a collaborative environment. So if somebody says to me, Jeff, I have an idea. What do you think about this? And it's better than my idea. I'll say, thank you, and give them credit for it. Listen, I've never operated a camera. When I say to a camera guy, okay, I want a 2-shot here for these 8 bars of the music, and I want you to sort of, if you're a Steadicam guy, I want you to move around for the 8 bars and start over on the stage left side and end up on the stage right side, do a nice, 180-degree move. And that he might say to me, that's great, I'll do that for you, but let me show you something that you might like. And he'll show me something and I'll say, well, it's better than my idea. Let's do that. Thank you. Everybody waits for something to happen on the Oscars.
Of course,
like the
yeah.
Streaker with David Niven, and when Cher tripped up the stairs, and
right.
So it was the Madonna year. Madonna was singing one of the 5 nominated songs, a Stephen Sondheim song, and it was the song for the Dick Tracy movie. And Madonna was dating Warren Beatty at the time, and Warren Beatty's movie. Anyway, she drove us crazy with rehearsal and with I need this and I need that, and oh my God, it was like
She's the princess of pop at that time. She had to get it all right.
She was. So we did everything. She rehearsed. She was a pro, and she wanted to rehearse in her wardrobe, and she wanted the set there, and she wanted us to pre-record the track so that even though the orchestra was going to be playing live, the orchestra needed to pre-record for her so she could rehearse with. Oh my God, she cost us a fortune and all that. Anyway, one of the things we did was she wanted to come up out of the floor on an elevator.
Nice.
Very Madonna.
And so the Shrine Auditorium, the oldest venue in the city of Los Angeles, didn't have a hole in the floor, didn't have an elevator down in the basement. So we had to build all that. We had to get permission from the city and all that to cut a hole in the. Then she wanted to come up on an elevator, and the reason she wanted to come up is because the gown she was wearing was unbelievable. She was dressed to impress. We drilled the hole, we built the elevator, we had the elevator built, and she decided while she was putting all this together in the rehearsal hall, and we said we'd be able to do that, she said, when I come up on the elevator, I want everybody to see my gown. I want to be able to walk so people can see my gown. So I don't want a microphone in my way, but I need to sing the song with a stand mic because I have some choreography and I need to pick up the mic at some point and then put it back on the stand.
Right.
I don't want the microphone in my way when I come out. So build another elevator for the microphone to come up, which we did.
Full of simple requests, Miss Madonna.
Yeah.
Simple $1 million request. So the deal was she came up for the first 4 bars of music, and the next 4 bars of music she walked down. And as she was walking down, then the final 4 bars of music, just as she was getting to the point, the microphone would come up out of the floor. And so there were 12 bars of music, 4 bars for her to come up, 4 bars for her to walk, 4 bars for her to get to the microphone to go, and she starts a song.
Wow.
Okay, so we get to the dress rehearsal. Madonna's elevator comes up, and she's in full wardrobe and hair and makeup and everything for the dress rehearsal. So the camera operators can see, and I've got the shot to see her, the slit and the dress and all that. And her elevator comes up and she walks down, and the mic elevator doesn't come up, and she gets there and there's no mic.
Oh God.
So I always have, one of my insurance policies with audio is to always have 2 audio assist guys. They're called A2s. One on stage right and one on stage left, tuxedoed, wearing a tuxedo, So if God forbid anything happens and they have to walk out, they can walk out and look like a dancer, a choreographer. One of the guys walked out and handed her a mic, but she was really pissed off. And when she finished the number and walked off stage, the first person she saw was a stage manager, and she went off. And she said, when the dress rehearsal is over, I want to rehearse my number again. If that happens again, I'm walking,
Yeah.
So it was that. And everybody was sitting on pins and needles, and we rehearsed it and rehearsed all five. We did another rehearsal after the dress rehearsal, and everything worked perfectly. But somehow in the rehearsals, Madonna had gone off on the guy up in the opera box, and he got so nervous. And so on the lunch break, he decided he needed to calm himself down, and he went to the bar around the corner, and he had a couple of, whatever he had.
He had 2 drinks.
Yeah, 2 drinks, yeah.
He had 2-drink maximum. And he came back, and Madonna's number was about an hour and a half into the show, the live show on the air. And so the microphone guy decided, well, I don't have to do anything for an hour and a half. I'm going to take my headset off and just enjoy the show and relax. And
oh no!
Guess what happened?
He was right on time.
Yeah.
No, he fell asleep.
Of course. Goodness. Yeah, I was going to say, a couple of drinks, that'll do it to you.
And we tried getting him, on headset, and a stage manager ran up to the opera box, but it was too late.
Oh.
So one of my guys, walked out on stage, looked like a dancer, handed her a hand mic. And if you look at the show, you can see she's holding the hand mic like this because she was so nervous. She thought, she was anyway. Right. And then she starts singing, and as she's singing, the mic comes up.
Oh no!
After the stage manager got up and woke the guy up, but
oh dear.
Afterwards, the guy who was the head of that particular union came and apologized to me and said, "We're going to fire the guy." And I said, "No, please don't do that, man. Just don't." All right. So he made a mistake. He'll never do it again. The show went on. Nobody noticed but Madonna. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
Don't do that. The poor guy, he lives from paycheck to paycheck. This is his gig. Don't do that to him. So anyway, it made for good conversation, and all the journalists were able to write about Madonna almost didn't have a microphone to sing and all that. So
not the Oscars without some, newspaper
without
drama.
One thing going on, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Another quick story. I told you Gil Cates and I did movies around the world. So Jack Lemmon's in Russia. And the day before the show, I gave an hour to each one of the 5 locations to make sure that the audio and the video and the satellite and everything was working properly. So all the other locations are fine. We get to Russia, and so everything's on a little bit of a delay. But we go to rehearse Jack Lemmon, and the picture is perfect, but there's no audio. So the ABC technicians are talking to the Russian technicians, and the satellite guys are trying to figure everything out. And my hour of time runs out. And so we've got the camera's perfect, what he has to do, the 2 cameras that were operating there. They've been told what to do through the interpreter. I rehearse with them, they're fine. And the audio guys are still working on the audio. The hour runs out, I have no audio.
Oh
no.
So the next day, the show's on the air, and the only other time I get to see Jack Lemmon in Russia is the dress rehearsal. And we do the dress rehearsal, and I say, good luck, everybody. I hope everything works. And, and we do the dress rehearsal, and we cut to Billy says, and now we go to Jack Lemmon in Russia, in Moscow. And Jack, how you doing? And Jack goes,
yeah.
Can't hear a word.
Oh no.
I said to Billy after the dress rehearsal, I said, you better be ready to go out and say, we're having, Jack's in Russia, and and make some kind of joke, say something funny, and then announce the nominees, and you'll have to announce the winner. Billy was standing by. We had an envelope in Los Angeles, and we had an envelope in Russia for Jack Lemmon, which wasn't to be opened until we were on the air. So anyway, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, we're on the air. And now we go to Jack Lemmon in Russia. Jack, how you doing? And I cut to Russia, and the picture's perfect. And Jack says, I'm doing fine, Billy. How you doing?
Oh,
Yeah.
my God.
Heart attack averted.
Everything was perfect. Everything was perfect.
That's
and,
amazing.
it was one of those moments, but that's what makes everything so exciting.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to, I always have a plan B. I have an insurance policy for everything. I don't know what's going to happen.
You can't plan for everything.
No. So as a director, you got to be sharp enough to think on your feet and have enough people around you who know that you've got a problem and it needs to be fixed because you're live on the air, and everybody rises to the occasion. When I do a show live on the air, 1 minute before we're live on the air, when my AD says 1 minute, I always say to everybody, good luck, everybody. It's going to be great. Those are my final words before 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, we're live.
Well, that's incredible. And referencing you at the title of your book again, what was it like for you to move from that chair, the big seat as it were, to sitting down in your own chair at home to write this book? Like, was that a new skill you had to work on, or did the stories just flow out of you easily?
Well, I'd never written a book before. That was something that I wanted to do, and I needed a ghostwriter. I needed somebody. I didn't know how to put a book together. I had all the stories and I knew how to tell them, but I didn't know how to put a book together. So I worked with a ghostwriter and a transcriber. The ghostwriter, in putting the book together, it was very important to me that she kept the book in my voice, in my words. I didn't want her as a writer. She's got 7 novels under her belt. She also has an Academy Award for being part of a group of screenplay writers for writing.
Oh, wow.
She's written a couple of biographies. She's fantastic. And so at one point, I understood what she was doing putting the book together, but we got to a point where drifted a little bit away from, I wouldn't talk like that. I wouldn't say those things. And I said to her, why did you do that? She said, because I wanted to make sure that the reader turned the page and that I could keep them going. I said, I understand that, but you can't, I don't say those things. You can't do that. All of a sudden, people are going to know it's not me. So anyway, we went through that and she fixed everything. We had one more interesting sort of conversation where she said to me, I've got this great idea for all the chapters on specials. You've done, almost 175 television specials. I've got this great idea how to set it all up and everything. You got to tell me, though, your most favorite special. What was your most favorite, the number one special, your most favorite special that you've ever done? And I sat for a moment and there was deathly silence. You could hear crickets. And I finally said to her, Lauren, you've got 3 children, right? You're the mother of 3 children. Which one's your favorite?
Right.
She
Absolutely.
started laughing. I said, they're all my children. I love them all equally. I don't have a favorite.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. And so
how do you choose? How do you choose, right?
Yeah, impossible.
Yeah. How do you choose? Each show has a life of its own. It really does. Even when you're doing a weekly series, every single week, the hour variety show that you do every single week, it's different. You have different guests on. The writers write something different. There's a formula. The hosts are going to be introduced, or the host, they're going to come out, they're going to welcome the audience somehow. If it's a singer, they do it with a song. If it's a comedian, they do it with a little bit of a monologue, and then they introduce their first guest. It's a formula. Carol Burnett sort of set the formula for all those variety shows. When I started doing variety shows, television was still in its infancy. And with the two shows that sort of changed the face of television were the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour and Laugh-In.
Mhm.
They both came around the same time, and they gave us boys and girls, men and women who were doing television shows, it gave us an opportunity to grow with the invent of the things that we were doing on television. I got to try things that had never been tried before.
Mm-hmm.
And, most of them worked, some of them didn't. But we learned and we created the growth of television to enable it to be what it is today, which is spectacular. It's spectacular today.
We're all grateful for all your work building that.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm not taking credit for it.
You're part of the team, part of the big team of entertainment.
I was part of the big team.
I would imagine working with a co-writer. I mean, you've had such an incredible career that there was probably a lot of stuff that she forced you to cut out, right? I mean, was that probably the most challenging part of working on a book? Was all the stuff that's great, but it just, at a certain point you have to cut and you can't include everything.
Well, the book is 350 pages, and it was over 600 pages when we first put it together. There was a lot to cut out, and it was really difficult for me to cut things, but the publisher didn't want I didn't want the book to be 600 pages. I mean, Barbra Streisand's book is over 900 pages.
Right.
She wasn't going to cut anything out, and she's Barbra Streisand. She can do that.
Right.
I'm Jeff Margolis. I couldn't do that,
Right.
So
there's a lot of misty watercolored memories in the world, apparently.
Right. Well, listen, the publisher and my ghostwriter, her name is Lauren Stevens, and everybody has said, this is a perfect opportunity to do volume 2. You can easily do another book and say, you can just start the book by saying, there are a couple of stories I forgot to mention.
Right, yeah. That's incredible.
And do volume 2. You know what I'm doing now, which is I'm starting in about a week or so, which is really going to be another challenge for me, which I've never done. We're doing an audiobook.
Hey.
Wow, that'll be cool.
Will you be reading it?
I'm reading it.
That's awesome.
And the fun thing about that was that there's a company called Audible. I'm sure you have the app on your phone or on your computer. And Audible decides who reads the book. So I had to audition to read my own book.
You had to audition to be yourself.
Which I've never done before. I've never written a book. I've never auditioned. Anyway, I got the part. I passed the test. So I'm really looking forward to doing that as well.
We're certainly not professionals in the sense that you are, but I can pass along one thing. With a lot of talking, you're going to need a beverage. So I would recommend an ice cold San Pellegrino or two to get you through a podcast or your audiobook, right?
I have one right here. Let's take a drink.
Hey,
cheers.
Refresh our voices.
Oh man. Well, Jeff, people have got to be, obviously as we mentioned, the book is called, We're Live in 5, and people can order it on Amazon and everywhere that they sell books. But once people read the book and they kind of get, blown away by your story, where can people connect with you and kind of follow, all the adventures that you've got coming up in the future?
Probably on my website, Jeff Margolis Productions.com. And jeffmargolisproductions.com. And we keep it pretty up to date with what's going on in the company and what's going on with me. So that would be sort of the best place. And I think I am going to probably write a second book.
Please.
That's awesome. Well, we would love to have you when the second book comes out as well.
Well, listen, anytime you want me, if you want to do any kind of update after the book comes, a couple of months after the book comes out.
No, that would be wonderful too.
I'd be happy to come back and sit and chat with you.
That would be great.
See how it's doing and all that.
We are so excited to see what's next for you, and we can't wait for the general public to get a chance to read this book. It's a pretty great book, and we're excited that you get to share it with the world. So thank you for that.
Sure, thank you. One of the things that we did in writing the book was I also wanted to make it almost like a textbook for
Mm.
film and television students, to be
Yeah.
able to give them some kind of inspiration, something to look forward to, and to tell them, listen, I was fortunate. I had a little bit of nepotism,
Mm.
you know, but it's a tough business to break into. You've got to, like I said in the very beginning, you've got to have the confidence in yourself and the talent. Most importantly, you've got to have the talent to back you up.
Mhm.
But I want to give students the hope that they can work hard. And there are a couple of clues in the book where you can maybe get a door open for you to, get your foot in the door.
Right.
Here's who you can call if you want. I tell in the book, I talk about how important it is to look at closing credits
Mm.
of a show and
Mhm.
see the people who do what they do. And if you want to be a writer, look and see who the head writer is. And at the very end, look and see who the production company is for the television show. Get that number. They're all online. Get that number, call the office, have the confidence in your voice, and know how to work your way in to get to talk to the head writer's assistant. You can get that far. And if you're good and passionate about what you want to do, you can get to the head writer and you can get a meeting. You
Wow.
might not get the job, but you can at least get a meeting.
Get a
Oh, yeah.
meeting. That's incredible. Yeah, I mean, when I think that that's so cool that you've attempted to do that in this book, because I feel strongly, and it sounds like you do too, that when you reach, the kind of penthouse of success that you have, at a certain point, you have a responsibility to send the elevator back down for the next generation, right? And so it's so cool that you're working in those tips to help younger generations follow, in your footsteps and hopefully reach, to take the torch and to reach the level of success that you had. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Well, I've always felt that I have an open door policy. If many times a young director has come to me and said, for the first time, I'm not doing a show in a studio. I'm doing a show in a theater, and I've never done a theater before. Can you help me place my cameras? The show is going to be this, and I need this kind of coverage. Can you help me? And I say, sure. Bring me the set plan, or bring me the seating plan of the theater, and I'll tell you the best place to put your cameras on stage and in the house to get the coverage you need for this kind of show.
Mm-hmm.
And I sit down and, why not? Pay it forward.
Pay it forward. That's exactly
Pay
right.
it forward.
Well, I know we want to thank you for opening your doors today and chatting with us and coming on the show. It really has been just an amazing time with you. And I think we could probably sit here for another, 24 hours and talk, just barely get through all the stories that you have. But it's really incredible. We're just so thankful and grateful. And absolutely, we think people should check out the book and the volume 2 that you said is on the way at some point. One last time, we're Live in 5, My Extraordinary Life in Television. Check out Post Hill Press, Amazon, anywhere books are to be bought and sold here in the future. And it's absolutely worth checking out because these are
For sure.
just a few pages I've read. I'm already hooked. So you're going to have me turning the page for the next couple of weeks there, Jeff.
Great. Well, thank you guys. Thank you guys. It's been great talking to you. And like I said, anytime you want me to come back, just let me know. I'll be there for you.
We will take you up on that. Thank you,
Please
Jeff.
do.
We appreciate it.
Okay.
All right. Well, you can catch us on Instagram at 2Drink Maximum. Please give the show a little like or subscribe, and we will see you on the next episode.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in. Cheers everybody.